Hello, and welcome to Spokane County Spotlight. I'm Commissioner Amber Waldref, and my guest today is Juliet Sinisterra, Spokane University District CEO. Juliet, welcome to the program. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I was honored to be asked and chosen by the Board of Commissioners this year to serve on the University District Board of Directors as well as the Public Development Authority Board. And I was pretty amazed at the growth in the University District since I served on the Spokane City Council. There's so many amazing opportunities. So I wanted to invite you today to come and talk to our viewers about the University District. And but first, let's learn a little bit more about you. You have a long history of working in Spokane in urban planning, design, community engagement. You and I go way back. We've worked together in our past. Maybe you could tell viewers a little bit about you before we dig into the University District.
Yeah, sure thing. So I'm one of those born and raised people from Spokane. And I studied architecture and urban design in my college years, and I graduated from WSU. Soon after that, I went to Seattle and worked for a number of years for a design firm there. And the firm was small and wanting to get more into like master planning and urban development. And there was 3 of us in the firm that could write. So very few architects can actually write. I found out. And so we started doing a lot of master planning for them. And I was, that was right out of college. But it was great. It was a great experience. I learned a ton. It was a lot of community engagement. I worked on projects like the Tacoma Art Museum, the Experience Music Project, the Bellevue Art Museum, the Burke Museum. I did some master planning for Antioch University. So that sort of laid the groundwork for me on thinking about architecture in kind of a larger scale, not just, a single family home, but how can we start to think about the city and how we design the city and how we build community through city form. So, after that, I moved back to Spokane when I was married and starting to have children, and did some small projects during those kind of early years of being back, but then got really interested in notions around green building and sustainability, and that started to inform my work at that point as well. I worked for a nonprofit for a few years doing kind of community development type work in the Saranac building.
Yes, down the hall.
Maybe when we first met. And,
office mates.
Yeah. And then I actually, at that point, I think in 2008, I was appointed to the Mayor's Sustainability Task Force and started to get a lot more engaged in sort of Spokane and what was happening in Spokane and issues around sustainable development and community development. I spent a few years working at the nonprofit. I even launched my own business around sustainability for a few years. And then in 2012, I was approached by City Parks to potentially manage the Riverfront Park Master Plan. And because I had done so much master planning in the Seattle area, it seemed like a good fit. I applied and got that job as a project manager.
And we got to work with each other again.
We did. So during that time, I kind of oversaw that the vision development, the concept development with the community. We had an advisory committee that kind of advised that vision, helped get that master plan formalized, helped the Parks Department and Park Board get the $60 million to invest in the park, and then help them transition. At that point in time, I was just full board. I really just wanted to be working on Spokane kind of development. I went to work for the Downtown Spokane Partnership for a few years, and I've ended up here now. So I'm here now at the University
We're lucky
District.
To have you.
And
it's exciting.
Yeah, it's a good fit for me. I've really enjoyed the position so far. It's been fantastic.
So the U District then is just an extension, really, of the work you did downtown, the work you did to master plan the park, which looks amazing. So the University District, in the name, has 5 major universities, 2 medical school programs, University of Washington and WSU, and also the community colleges have their administration buildings there. There's so much more than just the universities, though, in the university district. So can you give us an overview? What is the university district area-wise, and why is it so unique, and why did we form this district, here in the city of Spokane and Spokane County?
Yeah, so the university district, it's been talked about for decades. I think even in the early 90s, there was conversations going on about forming something like the UD. It really came into formal fruition or formation into around 2011. And it's a public development authority. So we have established University District Revitalization Area boundaries, which is about 770 acres, just located to the east of the downtown. It's a lot larger than most people realize. We go all the way from like Fifth Avenue in the south, all the way up to like Sharpen Mission, north of Gonzaga. We go into Brown, into the downtown on the west side, and over to Hamilton on the east. And then even along the river as we go north of the river. So, it's a substantial area, but within that UDRA boundary, we collect, the city and state collect taxes. We receive a small percentage of the property and sales tax gets redirected to the UDPDA. And then we can reinvest that in things like public infrastructure. We can do public-private partnerships. We can invest in parks. We can own land. I think when the city and the county really jointly created the PDAs, the intention was to kind of create these more community-informed, collaborative economic development wings for the city and county. And I know
I was involved with setting up the very first PDA, which is actually the Northeast Hilliard PDA. Right. And now we have the U District as a PDA. We have the West Plains area. And the county's actually just established a broadband public development authority. And of course, there's conversations about a regional homeless authority that would also be this structure called a PDA, which most people, what is that? But basically, you can do almost everything a government can do, except you can't levy taxes, but you can own property, you can bond off the property, you can enter into agreements, contracts. So it really, as you're saying, the vision behind it is you and the board are focused every day on how to implement the vision of the U District, which is maybe a better method than the city doing a little bit, the county doing a little bit, private developers doing a little bit. It brings everybody together under one umbrella. Yeah,
it's very collaborative. And you're right, we are a quasi-municipal corporation, so we are kind of like a little mini city government. And I do work very closely with city staff and county staff as well, primarily city because we're so much embedded in, near the downtown. And that's collaborative as well. So, I actually manage two boards. So we have the UDPDA board.
I get to sit on both of them.
You're on both. And the PDA board is smaller, but it really oversees how those public monies are invested.
Right.
And then the larger UDDA board is sort of the larger visioning board. And that's, folks, everyone, representatives from each of the universities, the community colleges,
business leaders, people who own businesses.
Yep.
In the boundaries.
Yep. And other economic development agencies, GSI, DSP. It's about 25 folks, and those folks are really kind of the keepers of the vision.
So that's a great segue. My next question was, what is the vision of the University District? What is that outlook for what it can bring to not just the city, the county, but even all of Eastern Washington? I
think some of the early folks involved with that envisioned the UD really did see this as this kind of, in and of itself, its own kind of economic development, wing, so to speak, for the region. And, by getting universities to be in collaboration with each other, by nature they are in competition, of course, but through the UD, they can all kind of wrap their heads around like, oh, we're trying to build up this region for the greater good of all. and not just for my university. So I think it kind of pulls them out of kind of being siloed and thinking just about their own programs, and how can we start to actually benefit the entire region through programs and collaborations, and how we think about development within the UD, how we attract students, how we retain students. You know, I think the medical schools are examples of an outcome of the UD. You know, I will say that we've kind of had these two bookends that have really defined, you know, the general kind of values or vision for the UD. And one is that heavy focus on life sciences. You know, how can we boost life sciences, you know, at all levels?
And I know there's in the most recent Journal of Business, there's a huge, the front page is all about the biosciences initiative that's going on that may end up locating some buildings in the U District.
Yeah, so the Evergreen Bioscience Cluster is, they're now under Greater Spokane Incorporated, but they're really focused on how can we start to create a more thoughtful kind of regional workforce and supply chain and startups that really kind of support the emerging life sciences research and, you know, education that's happening in the University District. And so it's that kind of balance and thinking about the whole system as, you know, as a whole. And
well, those are good paying jobs.
they are.
So it's going beyond training nurses, doctors, pharmacists, PTs. It's also thinking about research, developing new products, new medicines, and all of that has a ripple effect on our entire region, and economics and new businesses, new hiring, and, you know, well-paid jobs here in Spokane.
Yeah, and some of them even could be well-paying jobs right out of high school. A lot of the bioscience, you know, economy that we're seeing across the state, they are looking for employees at all skill levels. A lot of our conversations, you know, have been, you know, with Evergreen Bioscience and the universities and the community colleges. You know, how can we start to create pipelines for kids that this is a good fit for, so they know, like coming even right out of high school, like, hey, this could, you know.
That's been one of my passions, is that we've done so well in developing these buildings. The new medical school, there's the GU, UW Medical School Partnership Building that you see as you come off the freeway, the Hamilton overpass. We've got the new WSU buildings. We've got the new Catalyst building that was built, that dark kind of gray-black building that's south of the rail line. All of these amazing buildings, but I want to see students from Spokane and from my neighborhood. I'm a neighbor just north of the U District. I live in the Logan neighborhood, and there's a lot of students there that we need to get them onto that campus and think about their future. What are some of the other most recent projects or things that the U District has worked on, and what do you see coming down the pike?
Yeah, I mean, you touched briefly on the Catalyst building, which I think is important to
discuss tell folks about that building, because it's more than just a building. It's a pretty, it's a piece of architecture that has a lot of unique qualities.
Yeah, and it was a collaborative effort as well between Avista Utilities and McKinstry. And actually Katerra, who was a design construction firm, they were also a key partner in the beginning. But it's a cross-laminated timber building, so it's completely, you know, built from sustainable materials. It's absolutely gorgeous to go inside. We
had a board meeting in there, and that was the first time I've been in there. It is amazing. So is it true that it's a net zero energy building? What does that mean?
It is. So Avista likes to say that Catalyst is part of the 5 smartest blocks in North America. And the way they've created that district, that small eco district is how they refer to it, is the Catalyst building has an array of solar panels at on its roof that energy is then collected, and it's actually stored in an adjacent building called the Scott Morris Energy Innovation Center. So there's massive batteries there that store kind of all that collected energy, and then it's redistributed locally to 5 blocks within, you know, that area. Scott Morris Center is fantastic. Students are coming from all over the country to kind of study how this energy is being collected and distributed at a localized level. You know, I think a lot of folks have heard how much concern there is around, grids across the country. Avista's being very proactive in kind of research and development around that. And so
instead of each building needing its own heating and cooling system,
right.
instead you have a centralized system that can feed, the energy can move between all the different buildings.
Yes, yep.
And there's a room for growth for future
Yeah,
development?
I think they're trying to create a replicable model that is cost effective, that could be done, throughout potentially Spokane. So I'd love to see it expanded within the UD to begin with, and how when you create a much more localized grid model like that, it becomes less susceptible to big, massive grid failure and breakdowns, and it also is renewable. So there's a lot of benefits to it, but that's really been another pillar of the UD, is sort of that notion of kind of sustainable, smart energy development alongside the life sciences.
Well, and I think that I was going to bring up in our conversation today, one of the projects I've been involved with is Urban Nova, which is, sometimes we used to call it the Smart Cities Initiative, based out of Spokane. And I know Urban Nova, when I was involved, was has been trying to gather more interest, right, around the country about what we're doing here in Spokane and catalyze new smart city initiatives that save energy, make people's lives better. They could be transportation projects, they could be electric grid projects, they could be battery projects, solar projects. So is Urban Nova still pretty active with the University District and the campus?
Well, so they are their own entity. We are suite mates with the Urban Nova CEO, so I see him daily. And I mean, you're right. Like, I think Avista and Itron and others, really the initial impetus behind Urban Nova was, how can we start to use Urban Nova almost like a think tank around some of these smart energy systems. And they've done a lot with kind of data collection and understanding, the community and their energy needs and how it could be more efficient. So Avista spends a lot of time on grid optimization. That's going to be key for us meeting our kind of carbon neutral goals as a state in the coming decades.
Right.
And so Urban Nova is sort of seen as this kind of point of, being able to research and figure out the data, and then ideally recommending how to implement it. And ideally the UD becomes that place where we can implement the work that Urban Nova is doing.
So we talked about, we got bioscience focus, we have smart energy, green building, green energy research and applications happening. And so what other private-public partnerships do you see happening? I know so one of the roles of the University District PDA, Public Development Authority, is to try and is to use public dollars to invest in public infrastructure and land. How do you work well with private developers to get them to develop? What would you say to a private developer about why they should develop in the University District?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I meet with developers regularly from not just Spokane, from all over the region. Developers tend to be very interested in sort of, the big values that the UD is pushing forward, the life sciences, the smart city, sustainability, all that's, at a regional level, that's very appealing to developers. What we're seeing is, the UD has a role to kind of also play to kind of create that environment, like almost create a tipping point where we invest enough public dollars in things like parks and destinations within the UD that make it active and make it interesting.
The pedestrian bridge.
Yeah.
That got finished. I was pleased that I got to work on that when I was on the Spokane City Council, get that completed. And if people haven't had a chance to check it out, I know not everyone gets down to that area, but it's a beautiful bridge to run across, walk across, connects the north to the south across Martin Luther King Way and the railroad. But that's an example of, once we put in that public infrastructure, then the Catalyst building, which was built by private interests, was able to have that touch point, that connection, right, north to south.
Yep. Yeah.
So so what you're hearing from developers is that they like the mission, the vision, the focus on sustainability, but also these public investments that have been made.
They do. And, because they want to see those investments, because then when they invest with their private monies, the market's going to better support their investment. And we just did a real estate analysis with a group out of Portland that really looks at kind of urban systems from a development standpoint, a financial development standpoint, and that was really what came back as well. We kind of already knew that, but it started to give us more of kind of the actual specific data that would support, okay, how can we be really strategic on how we reinvest the public money that then creates a tipping point for the developers.
Well, and for one issue that, of course, Spokane's grappling with is a need for more housing.
Yep.
So I know when I saw the results of that study that you're talking about, housing developers were looking for little mini parks. They were looking for more green, more street trees and bike lanes, because the people that they want to lease these housing units to or sell these housing units to are looking for those types of urban amenities.
Yeah.
So tell me more about housing and how do you see the future of housing in the University District?
And that is a key question I get from developers. Why do people want to live here? And so I think that's one thing, a role for the UD to help answer for the private development community. And the study really sees, in order to kind of create that tipping point, to see the kind of density we want to see for vibrancy and safety and investment, within the south sub-area, which is just south of the rail tracks.
Kind of the East Sprague, between Division and the Sprague Union District.
Right, yeah, pretty much that area.
Which is kind of a mixture right now of housing, older housing, light industrial, business. It's kind of got a mix of uses, but a lot of opportunity.
There is a lot of vacant land as well. But what we're seeing is the need for potentially over 4,000 new units in the next 20 years in that area alone.
Well, it's a great place to put them with excellent bike ped connections, transit, easy access to the freeway.
Yep. Yeah.
I mean, it's a great opportunity for the whole region to get those housing units in there.
Yeah.
But what they're looking for is some more amenities to support that housing, because traditionally you haven't had that many units in that area, so you don't have maybe a pocket park, or sometimes the crosswalks and some of the safety might need to be improved.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one area we're really focused on. What can we prioritize in regards to parks and amenities? We did just receive, along with the city, $3.9 million to convert Pacific Avenue that goes from Sherman into the downtown into a greenway. So that will be a substantial investment for the UD. It also goes into the downtown. But we are looking at Pacific Avenue going east as well, and looking for additional dollars there.
To connect over to the Ben Burr Trail, eventually to Centennial Trail.
And the East Sprague and East Central neighborhoods. So that's, things like that are hopefully going to spur and encourage more housing development from private entities. Eastern, I've been in great conversations with Eastern Washington. They are located in the Catalyst building. They have about 1,200 students there. And they're really interested in how can they help build up the area around Catalyst into kind of this urban campus that complements the Cheney campus. And so they're wanting that to kind of have both ends and how they attract students to Eastern.
So what have you guys been thinking about with arts and culture and how those could be integrated more into the University District?
Yeah, so Spokane Art School has relocated into the UD, so we're very excited about that.
I know. I want to go check out their new digs.
Yeah, they have. They occupied a kind of brick warehouse structure. It's right on the corner of 2nd and Sherman. I think they're super excited. They have fantastic studio space there. So anyone looking for art classes, I would encourage Spokane Art School.
Right in the U District. Awesome.
And we recently did a placemaking study. So we worked with groups from Spokane Arts and Terrain, and kind of thinking big picture, like how can we start to integrate arts, really systemically into UD planning. There is some beautiful art, in the WSU campus.
Yes.
Along the bridge, on both landings of the bridge you mentioned. But ways that art can also be a catalyst for economic investment. So things like a UD mural program that really starts to celebrate the life sciences and the smart city, you know, storytelling. So people really start to understand, you know, the people and the history of the UD, which is pretty rich and interesting. And I'm actually right now doing a small scope of work with Larry Sebula. He's a Eastern Washington University historian. He created the Spokane Historical website. He's going to do kind of a research paper for us to help inform kind of how we start to tell those stories through art of the UD and its history.
Well, and there's history that goes way back to our Spokane tribe and Native peoples along the river to Gonzaga, coming into the industry and manufacturing in the area, historical tradespeople working in the area. There's just so much interesting, the railroads, of course. I mean, most of the university buildings, the WSU campus, are all built on old railroad land. So there's just a ton of history that would be great to tell those stories, but also just have that art, have music events. Are there any events coming up or things that you want to let people know about with the U District?
Well, the STA City Line, the ribbon cutting is next Tuesday.
Tuesday, July 18th? Is that right? Okay.
July 18th.
I think it's at the one of the stations on the Gonzaga campus. The station that's right by their bookstore, by the Gonzaga bookstore. And that will be the official ribbon cutting for this this central. That's a key piece of infrastructure. You don't think of a bus as a piece of infrastructure, but it is. It is going to be the first bus rapid transit line in Eastern Washington, which means frequent bus trips, level boarding, like you're walking onto a train. It means you don't have to wait in line to swipe your card. You buy your ticket and walk right on. So it's going to be an amazing new experience right through the University District. So that's
really
an exciting event. I will be there with bells on.
So that's a great, really, we're very excited about that to actually finally open. And I know STA has, they worked so hard on it.
I'm sure you can go to Spokane Transit to find out when that ribbon cutting is occurring. So exciting.
The Trent Avenue Bridge just had their ribbon cutting this last week. So that's really exciting.
And we had the Don Cardong pedestrian bridge that connects down there at the GU Law School area over to the U District on either side of the curve of the river there. So, well, you know, Juliet, I'm afraid we are out of time. But it's been a lovely conversation, and I've learned a lot, and I hope our viewers have really benefited from understanding the value of all this work that's going on in the U District and how the trickle effect out into our community is just huge with the biosciences, sustainability, future housing, future development. It's just really exciting, and I just see a great future for the University District. So thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
And I want to remind our audience that this program and videos from all the public meetings that the Spokane Board of County Commissioners hold can be accessed on our Spokane County homepage and our Spokane County YouTube channel. I'm Commissioner Amber Waldref again, and I thank you for joining us today on Spokane County Spotlight.